Who am I? I am a teenager who has just graduated high school. Everyone calls me Dua. I come from a very big family of 5 kids. We all live together with mom and dad, in the middle of the city, New York. But, life has been so expensive lately. Especially growing up as a girl, there is so much stuff you need. Now every girl does their nails and eyelashes every month. Every girl buys clothes that are trendy for the moment. I don't get it. Where do they get all this money? Mom and dad work a lot for us to have a promising future, but I'd feel guilty if I asked them money for fixing my eyelashes. That's just selfish. But now it's the perfect time for me to look for a job. I have graduated. Plus, I am on my summer break. Why not make some money? There is nothing to do at home anyways, so I have applied anywhere that I could. As a babysitter, waiter, and cooker, even though the only things I know to make are plates of pasta. But lying in your CV never hurt anyone. But it had been almost a month, and nobody had written me back. I was feeling depressed. I was bored staying at home 24/7. I was still going out with my friends, but that wasn't enough. But one day, everything changed. It was a hot, beautiful day, and I was staying outside on my balcony having my cup of iced coffee. The usual. I said hi to my neighbors, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. They lived next door. They were walking their dog. I feel sorry for them because they never had the chance to have a kid. I heard that the woman tried to even adopt, but they were successful. They moved into our neighborhood some years ago. They must feel lonely. As I was looking at them and thinking about this, their dog saw a cat, or a squirrel, and ran so fast that it took Mr. Smith on the ground. I ran so fast to see if he was okay. He was old, after all. He was in his mid-50s. I gave him my hand and helped him out. His forehead was bleeding because he had fallen with his face. On the other hand, Mrs. Smith ran, trying to catch the dog. I told her that I would take care of it. I love dogs, but I think dogs love me too because he came at me running. The Smiths had the cutest Labrador. They were shocked and said that their dog barely loved anyone. They laughed, saying that they had gotten old and couldn't even walk their own dog. My heart broke, so I offered to help them. I said to the Smiths that I would be happy if they let me walk their dog every day. The Smiths laughed and said that that's exactly what they had been looking for someone to look after their dog since both of them are busy in work. They said that there are times that they can't walk the dog for weeks. They said that their dog was crazy for going to the park. It is settled then, I said, laughing. Mom and Dad had never let us keep a dog before. I was excited. But, the Smiths said to me that they are not going to let me look after their dog without getting me paid. I didn't want to sound selfish, and I said that there was no need to pay me. After all, we lived next door. It was a favor that I would happily do without asking for anything in return. But they insisted, and they offered me a good payment. I was surprised. What do the Smiths work? I have no idea. I didn't care. I was just happy that I had something to do now. Something to start my day with. They said I could begin to walk the dog starting from the following day. They gave me a key to their house and told me all the places where they keep the dog's food and everything else it may need. So, the next day I went to the Smiths' house. They are at work during the mornings, and they keep the dog inside. I went in, and the place was so silent. It had a dark vibe. It looked dead. The dog jumped on me when it saw me. It was so exciting to take his first morning walk with me. It was a beautiful day. Everyone had begun to wake up, going to work. It was a lovely vibe. I went to the park, while the dog played around, I had my coffee. Was there a better job than this? I don't think so. Summer almost had gone by, and I was having fun with the Smiths. They would always pay me in time and beg me to stay for dinner. I always stayed for dinner. I had become the kid they never had. One day I decided that I would cook for them. They always work, and they never come home to a hot meal. I watched some YouTube videos, and I was pretty confident. I thought of making them some pizza. And that's what I did. As I was cooking and going through their kitchen, I came across some baby bottles and baby milk. I was confused. Was this for the dog? But again, the dog can drink on his own? However, I heard the car, and the Smiths were home. They opened the door, and I screamed, surprise. I could tell that Mr. and Mrs. Smith didn't seem to like the surprise. They looked terrified. Mrs. Smith said to me, "What have you done? Don't tell me you have been in the basement." Then, Mr. Smith told her to calm down. But, I haven't been in the basement, and even if I had, what was there to hide? I was angry because all I tried to do was make them feel loved. I went out of their house. The Smiths kept calling me, saying that I should stay, but Mrs. Smith yelled at me in a way that even my own mother never did. I decided that from now I would walk the dog only when the Smiths aren't home. I noticed that they had started letting the dog sleep outside. Was this like a message that I shouldn't go in? I thought about quitting, honestly, but I could buy everything that I wanted with this money. I wasn't asking for money from mom and dad anymore, which was my goal. I took the dog, put him on the leash, and wanted to start the walk. But the dog didn't want to leave the house. It was barking like never before and acting suspiciously. I kept telling it that we were going to the park. The dog loved the word park, but that day, he seemed uninterested. It kept looking at the house weirdly like he was trying to tell me something. I waited some minutes, and the dog still was staying in one place. Then, it hit me, what if the Smiths have forgotten something on? Like a flat iron? The whole house could get burned. Dogs can sense danger. So, I opened the door and decided to go in together with the dog. The dog immediately went into the basement. What a coincidence. The place that Mrs. Smith was afraid that I would go in. She made me more curious than ever. They weren't home, so I thought that I'd go there and see what it was. There were a lot of stairs, and it didn't have much light. Then, I came across a big door. The door was locked, and just when I thought of going back, I heard something coming from that room. It looked like someone was talking. I tried to find a key, searched around the place. Then, I touched the top of the door and noticed that I had felt something, a key. Now I had the chance to find out what was in there. I was scared and curious at the same time. What if there is an animal and I let it free? I opened the door, and guess what? There was a little girl, around 5 or 6 years old. But, she wasn't just like any other girl. She was special. I could tell that she had syndrome Down. Whose girl was this? Was it the daughter of Smiths? I thought that they had never had kids. Or had they kidnapped her? But, the most important question was, why was she in there? The place was terrible. It had no window, just some toys in the ground. The little girl seemed surprised to see me like she had never seen a human before. She was in a little pink dress and started walking towards me. She could barely walk or talk. I couldn't understand the word that she was saying. The dog seemed to love her too. It was licking her face, and they were playing together. It seemed like the dog wanted to take the little girl on a walk with us. It wouldn't stop barking. But, I couldn't risk my own life. What if the Smiths are back from their work? The little girl was clearly there because she was not supposed to be seen by others. I closed the door, and my heart was breaking. I had a million questions, but I decided to not tell anyone about this. I could go to jail for trespassing. I was on their property without their permission. I went out of the house, with my eyes full of tears, and continued to walk the dog. I couldn't stop but think how lonely that girl must have felt. But I couldn't wait to get back there the next day and find out more about why was she kept that way. I decided to go there one more time. The key was in that exact location. I opened the door, and the little girl was sleeping on a very tiny bed. When was the last time she went outside and enjoyed the ray of sunshine? I came closer to her. She didn't hear me when I walked in. She was sleeping so peacefully. But, the dog, as always, ruining my business, barked. The little girl got scared, and she woke up. She woke up confused. I tried to make her feel less afraid, telling her that I had come to play with her. Her face immediately cheered up, saying, "Did you really come to play with me?" as she ran to get all of her toys, bringing them to me. She was playing with her toys, not knowing that there was a whole world that she didn't know existed. We played and played. I couldn't find a problem, a flaw to that little girl, that would be reasonable enough that Mr. and Mrs. Smith would keep her down there. But, unfortunately, it was time for me to go. The clock was ticking, and the Smiths could be home every minute now. But, days went by, and I wasn't doing my job at all. I wasn't walking the dog. I was spending time with the little girl. But, one day, I couldn't find the key at all. I was searching everywhere. The little girl was crying, banging the door. I was talking to her through the door, saying that I was there with her. Then, suddenly, I hear a car approaching Smith's house. It was Mr. Smith. I hid somewhere in the basement so he wouldn't see that I was there. I didn't know where the dog was. I was just hoping that it didn't make any noise. Mr. Smith came into the house and went immediately into the basement. He heard the little girl crying, and he seemed very mad about it. He has had the key in his pocket and opened the door. The first thing he did to the little girl was hit her, saying that she shouldn't make noises because someone might hear her. Then, he closed the door. But, I could still hear her crying. My heart broke into pieces. I couldn't allow this anymore. I waited till Mr. Smith left the house. He had left the key in the door too. It was the perfect time for me to save the little girl. I opened the door. My hands were shaking. The minute the little girl saw me, she smiled and was happy. I took her by my hands and ran as fast as I could. Finally, we made it out of the house. It was a sunny day, and the little girl couldn't open her eyes. She was curious about the surroundings. She was looking at the cars and at the houses weirdly. I noticed that this was the first time she had ever gone out of that house. I immediately took the little girl to my house and called Mom and Dad. I called 911 too. The police took the little girl and me to their office, telling them everything that I knew. Then, they went to Mr. and Mrs. Smith's house. They were shocked. After some hours, the Smiths came back from their work thinking that it was going to be a day like the others. But, no. The police were waiting for them outside of their house. At first, they acted like they had no idea what was happening. But, they couldn't fool anyone anymore. After some time, the Smiths got the chance to tell their side of the story, to confess. The reason why they kept the little girl there was because she was born with syndrome Down. They feel embarrassed. What a sick world we're living in. The little girl is now living in an orphanage where everyone is taking good care of her. But, I can't leave her there. I am thinking of adopting